This week, on a special edition of The Splash, we reflect on reporting the news during the pandemic, keeping the community together in times of crisis, and take a look at the present and the future as we exit the pandemic. The Splash is a production of Civic Center TV. We're a news magazine that covers everything from local news to feature stories, all so that we can bring you the latest from the greater West Bloomfield area. And now, let's dive into The Splash.
Welcome to this special edition of The Splash. I'm Brooke Allen. On March 24th, 2020, we aired episode 179 of The Splash just after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Shortly after, the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission, as well as Civic Center TV management, decided to suspend production of the show out of an abundance of caution, changing the way that Civic Center TV informed the community forever. And today, just over a year later, we have returned to regular production of Greater West Bloomfield's news magazine show on the dawning of a new time in our society as masks begin to come off, businesses begin to reopen at greater capacity, and vaccinations continue to be administered. And life as we once knew it becomes life as we will know it going forward. So let's get started. I am joined by Civic Center TV Associate General Manager and on-air personality, Tyler Kieft. And Tyler, this has been a long time coming, huh?
Yeah, it has. It's been well over a year. It's been a really tough year and an interesting year here as we had to quickly transition from what we were doing before, which was normally just, of course, this news magazine show, The Splash, that we're currently doing, where we'd go out in the community and we'd interview people about a variety of different topics, whether it be some event that they're doing, some project that they're working on, or so on or so forth. Now, all of a sudden, we can't do that because that's such an interactive project. And, of course, we can't be within 6 feet of each other without masks on. And even then, we want to limit that to something that's absolutely necessary. And so for us, it took what really was a major change in our operation over here in order to keep our business going, but also do our due diligence and our duty to the community to keep them informed at a time where there's so much information being thrown around and everyone's not entirely sure what is right and what is wrong.
Right. But out of that, the Megacast was born.
Yeah, the Megacast, it actually came together pretty quickly because we had been talking as things were starting to go toward the way of this is looking like it's going to be global. This is looking like it's going to be a major thing that's going to shut a lot of things down, and we have to be able to make an adjustment. So Dave Scott, Jake Kustash, our Splash producer at the time, the Cable Commission, Dave Alberry, the executive director of the Cable Commission, and I were all having constant conversations about, well, what can we do? And it really came together over one single weekend where we had a big meeting over the phone, and it was Dave Scott, myself, Larry Nyland was on it, our Zoom producer for the Megacast, and live event producer, virtual event producer here at Civic Center TV, Ken Cooper, our director of production over at Motown Digital. We were all having a conversation about, okay, we're going to start this show. We're going to be interviewing people virtually from our radio studio. We're going to set some cameras up in our current radio studio at the time and basically do some simulcast and also put that on the internet with community partners via Facebook Live, via our web streams, and really push this information out to as many people as we can with as many people as we can over a 2-hour span. And then really over that next weekend and the first couple of days of that first week, we were mobilizing to get everything ready, whether it be graphics and music, lighting and the cameras in the radio studio, making sure we could control that from multiple locations, getting people booked on the show. And really after the pandemic was declared, really on that day, we were doing the state of the communities at that time. Really at that point, that's where we were mobilizing to get the Megacast ready, and by midweek, the next week over, we were going.
And I mean, it continues to this day, and I mean, it has been such great information that has come out of there, and you've had some great guests, so looking back now, and even though the Megacast is going to continue, but looking back, how do you perceive from the beginning of that to where we are at this moment?
I think right now it's just as important really as it was when we began, because there was so much information at the beginning and a lot to process, and who's right, who's wrong, what are good sources versus bad sources, and really who should I believe. Now as we're coming out of this, I think our duty then transitions to how do we help people navigate all the information that they're going to have here as we're coming out of this pandemic, but also what they should be confident about, or maybe be a little more worrisome about, or really be considering what information do they need to make strong decisions for themselves, for their families, for their friends, and everybody else involved in their life in order to gradually exit this pandemic and do so safely, but also get back to regular life. Because
wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, because regular life really isn't going to be the same thing that it was before this pandemic, and we're all really going to be figuring out what that looks like together. And I think that's really what the Megacast is going to be about over the next several months, and maybe all the way through to a year plus, as we're getting back into whatever regular life looks like after COVID-19. It's going to be helping each other figure that out, finding that new information, gradually getting ourselves back there, and trying to inch everybody's confidence along until a point where we are no longer concerned about wearing masks around each other, or if we're spreading a virus that could potentially be deadly to one another, because we've reached herd immunity here in the U.S. and we've reached herd immunity throughout the world, even on a bigger scale. And maybe someday soon we'll be at a point where COVID-19 will be finally an afterthought.
That's an amazing thought to even think of, right? I mean, but we didn't even know that we would be at this point, right? I mean, it seemed like it was never going to come. And like you mentioned, the vaccines, people actually returning back to offices now, which is interesting because the questions actually don't seem to stop, right? And the confidence level, even going to the grocery store, I mean, you and I have talked about it as far as that goes. So just the shopping in general, just questions that people are going to have. And even into the fall, when kids go back to school full time in person, the questions are always going to be there. So it's really great that you're here answering those questions and helping out the community.
And what's even better is it's not us that's doing it. We're not looking into the camera and saying, this is what the information is, this is what you need to know, this is what you should be thinking on this. We're bringing people in that have a variety of opinions, that have a variety of experiences, and getting their point of view and getting their expert information in many cases about all of this that's happening around us. We're talking to experts in the medical community, like Dr. Russell Faust from Oakland County Health Division, like Eric Wallace and company from Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, to get more of the medical side of this. This is where we're at right now with COVID-19. This is why A, B, and C is being declared and why these rules are no longer entirely necessary, maybe. We're getting government officials to get their understanding of why they've changed some of these rules along the way, and then talking to regular people as well that are business owners, that are working on the front lines, and getting their perspectives too, so that when people are going out and saying, well, why do we still have people that are adamant about wearing masks despite the mask orders being down, we understand that some people are doing that just simply out of respect for other people, not knowing how concerned other people may be, not knowing how concerned these people on the front lines may be that maybe are not required to wear masks anymore, but maybe aren't entirely comfortable with that situation, but are still going into that situation because they need to work.
Exactly. So I've asked everyone this. I'll ask you, if you know what's coming, what is the one thing you've learned through all of this?
You got to constantly be on your toes and be ready for the next challenge. I think that's something that everybody's learned in some capacity throughout the pandemic, is you don't know when the next crisis is going to come, and you got to just be ready to address it when it's there. You're not going to know what it's going to look like, what it's going to be about, how tough it's going to be to get through, but if you're ready and you're creative and you're willing to lean on other people also along the way to help them out, but also reach out to them to help you out along the way, you can make some great things happen if you put a team together and work at these problems to find creative solutions to complex problems.
Yeah, if there ever was the term thinking outside the box, this pandemic has made all of us think it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So this week, actually, Tyler and fellow Megacast host Ronnie Dahl spoke together following one of their shows about the role of storytelling during these ever uncertain times of the pandemic, and also the uniqueness of getting a deeper look at life during the pandemic from those most affected by the crisis.
Ronnie, over the last 14 months, we've been doing this Megacast program here on Civic Center TV and on 89.3 Lakes FM, as well as a number of our partnering stations. And it's really been a change for us in how we cover news in the local area, but it's also kind of showing that new pace of how news is being covered altogether and in general, as we are able to speak to guests in great details about information that is pertinent to them and important to them in times of crisis, and just interesting things going on in the community. In your case, Ronnie, you came into this program about halfway through our run on TV, and having had a long career already in journalism where you've been out in the trenches, you've been speaking to people, you've been holding truth to power, what attracted you coming into this program to be able to do a show like this each and every day for 2 hours, talking to people at length about important things in our community?
Well, as a reporter, when you're out in the field, Tyler, we often have these conversations, but anyone in the public, that's not what you see. You may get what we call in the business a soundbite, and a soundbite is just a snippet of that interview, which might be 10, 20 seconds long. And you've had a 20, 25-minute conversation with the individual. For them to only get their message and that quick soundbite out to the public. So this is so different in the fact that we are able to have these conversations that we know other journalists are having. They're just not public. So I think that a lot of our guests appreciate it as well, because one of the things that's been so important, we are still in a pandemic, and this information is changing and changing rapidly. And so to be able to have these conversations at length with so many important people, then anyone from the general public, they can go ahead and listen in. And I think that is a huge value to them. And not just in a pandemic, I really think it's important as we go forward as well.
Yeah, it really is. And having been out in the community as a reporter for Channel 7, for Channel 2, and other markets throughout the U.S. Before that, you had been talking to these people, you've been putting these stories together. And when you're out in the field in that setting, Ronnie, as a journalist, as a reporter on television or in other mediums, what is your focus going into that story, and how does, in the story in that medium, and how does that translate to what we're getting additionally here doing a show like the Megacast?
Well, when you're actually, and I'm going to talk for TV, so it's different for print, we know, or for radio as well. Sure. But when you're approaching a story, it's not just about the interview and the information, but you're also so focused on the visual element. And so sometimes, your information, you have important information, but maybe you don't have a visual element to support that information, so that piece will be left out of the story. And if we heard it once, you heard it 1,000 times. Every broadcast journalist knows this. When you get back and the piece airs, and at most, sometimes you only get a minute. Sometimes you get a minute and a half. 2 minutes is almost unheard of in a TV broadcast segment. And one of the biggest things you get as you interview people, wow, that was quick. All that time that we talked, and only that small portion made it on air. Now, I will say social media is starting to change that as well. And we know that while in the typical broadcast, they can't play the entire interview, we do know that as social media has started to change over the years, some members of the media, they're becoming a little bit more social media savvy, and they are able to put the extended version of an interview maybe on their own personal Facebook page. But I guarantee it's not going to be the full interview. It may be 3 or 4 minutes or 7 minutes. It's not going to be that consistent 15, 20-minute interview, and to post it each and every day as well.
Yeah, and one of the big purposes of having news is not only to keep people informed, and of course to speak truth to power, but to lead people in a direction so that they can gather more information and make informed decisions. And especially during this pandemic, where we've had a massive information coming in from all different directions because of the technology we have access to, because of the number of people that are out reporting in various mediums. There was a lot to juggle for people throughout this pandemic, and there's still going to be situations like that going forward. So having the ability to have information from experts in the field, from people that are on the front lines of one crisis versus another, is so vital to be able to provide to people, and can really be helpful in addition to what we can get from traditional news, getting the very basics of the story, the most important points. Do you see this as being the future of journalism beyond what we see in traditional television and radio news reporting, as we've seen the rise of podcasts and other forms of other longer forms of investigative journalism and general journalism in recent years?
I think the future of journalism is going to be very interesting because we do know that we are losing so many investigative reporters due to various situations in the media industry, because, really you only have a few corporations that control most of the media outlets throughout the entire country. And so we do see that a lot of reporters are starting to leave the industry and trying to come up with other ways to be able to tell those stories and get that information out. Perfect example of that is Charlie LaDuff. Yeah. And, he left mainstream media, but he has found success on the platform. He uses Facebook as well as his podcast, the No BS News Hour, and he's still breaking news. He breaks news, and I will say that, a lot of the journalists will follow him and follow up on his stories because he has so many sources. But I've even seen that here with us on Civic Center TV with some of the interviews that we've done as well. You'll see some of the topics that we covered, be picked up by the mainstream media, maybe that day or a day or two later as well, because that is one thing that you'll find. A lot of times as a broadcast journalist reporter, deadlines are crazy insane. So sometimes you have to be so quick with some of these interviews that you don't have time to keep the individual talking, especially with some of our politicians. And so to keep them talking, then they are able to add other nuggets to that conversation that maybe you wouldn't have had as a mainstream media person. So I do think the industry is going to be changing, and let's hope that we're going to see more of this long form talk type journalism start to develop independently, but also other companies as well. They'll see some value in it, because I will say I think a lot of the people that we have had on the show, they expressed their appreciation for us doing the show, and and not just our elected leaders, not just our politicians, but also a lot of the business owners throughout this pandemic. One of the goals was, how are they surviving? What are they up against? And also maybe helping out another business because they were able to share some of the, tricks and tips that they've changed throughout the pandemic that's helped them along. So it's really about bringing the community together. And let's hope that coming out of the post COVID-19 craziness, if we ever get there, Tyler, that some of this sense of community and long-form journalism sticks around.
So as we go forward and as journalism goes forward, I'm just some TV and radio producer guy. I'm not a journalist, but being able to see the impact that a show like this has had on regular people in the community, on informing people in the community. It does cover what really are the pillars of the noble profession of journalism, which is to be able to provide important information to the public, to speak truth to power, and one of the more important ones, or most important, I would say, at least from what I have experienced doing this show, is providing voice to the voiceless and letting people know about how it really does, how something like this crisis really does impact people who are working on the front lines, people who are running businesses, small businesses, and keeping our neighbors, our friends, our family employed, and being able to tell their stories in detail so that people really understand the human element of the pandemic, but more importantly, in a general sense, the human impact of the news. Ronnie, anything else that we haven't touched on that you would like to say about what we've been doing here at the Oakland County Megacast and why something like this may be important to the community?
I just really hope that it continues and having the conversation continues as well. I think, again, like you said, Tyler, it's been so important for the people that live here. I just think about like the schools, right? The changes in the schools. And we've been able to definitely reach out in depth to so many of the superintendents. And it's vital information. And as we all emerge from this pandemic, we have to remember there's going to be a lot of changes going forward. And so let's hope the show continues as well.
Absolutely. And you can join Ronnie and I each and every day, Monday through Friday, live, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on the Oakland County Megacast. So as you enjoy what's going on around Orchard Lake, Sylvan Lake, Kego Harbor, and of course, West Bloomfield on the Splash each and every Tuesday, you can join Ronnie and I in the mornings for more details and more of that important information as we continue to bring you news on the COVID-19 pandemic and so much more in the greater Oakland County area.
You can find more information about the Megacast on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Well, in the age of social distancing and capacity limits, one of the elements of what makes our community so close, in-person events and celebrations, it was simply not safe. Yet our community persevered and with some creativity ensured that while we did what we had to do to protect ourselves, we did not forget to honor and cherish others. And I'm joined now by Civic Center TV producer Larry Nyland, who has had the unique task of producing the ceremonies and celebrations that have become traditions in greater West Bloomfield virtually during the pandemic. And Larry, it's so nice to see you in person.
You as well. Yes, it's been a while.
It has been a while, although we did see each other on Zoom a few times. But
yes.
So how has this been for you?
Well, I mean, when you think about the events that we normally produce here, it usually is something where our prep time is just kind of going to a location, like going to a country club, setting it up, and then we shoot it, and in 2 hours, we're done. Well, this new world that we're living in has created a situation where there is a lot of preparation. So literally Michigan Week, which we just aired last week, we probably started the preparation for that back in March. And it's just been a long thing of just, recording videos, recording acceptances, recording presenters and things like that. But it does give us the opportunity to get it as perfect as we can get it, which sometimes you can't get when you're doing it live and in person. So it is a lot of work, but I think it does help produce a good product.
So are you feeling that Zoom fatigue we've been talking about for so long?
I am Zoom fatigued because I am on a lot of Zoom meetings and I'm also producing a lot of Zoom meetings for the Megacast. I am the person in charge of getting all the guests into that Zoom meeting, getting through the show, getting things like that, getting everything perfect for that. So yes, I am zoomed out.
Well, good news. Things are slowly getting back to normal, right? And I mean, obviously we're here doing the Splash, so things are almost there. But tell me, what's the one thing that really has struck you or what you've learned during this pandemic?
What have I learned during this pandemic? Well, one thing I was thinking about right now, am I moving my head too much? The reason I'm asking that question is because I just listened to an interview with George Clooney, and he was talking about when he was on ER that one of the executive producers of that show was Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg came up to him and looked at where they were looking at dailies, and he said, George, if you would just stop moving your head so much, you will be a movie star.
Really?
So I just want to make sure that I am not moving my head too much because I don't want that to be the only thing that's getting in the way of me being a movie star. But no, okay,
I think you're good. I think you're good. So tell me what I mean. Besides the Zoom fatigue, and now we're transitioning back, right? So how do you think that's going to go?
Well, I mean, it is one of those strange things where, like, when you are. Even ourselves here, we are 6 feet apart. We've both been, if I can,
yes, that's fine.
I can reveal, we've both been vaccinated. So you feel comfortable about that. But sometimes you still wonder, is the person you're talking to, is the person you're close to, are they vaccinated, and things like that? Is it still safe? Like, it's hard to mentally get out of the 18 months or however long it's been of wearing masks and avoiding people.
Right,
I mean, I seemed like I probably went back maybe 3 years of avoiding people, not wearing masks.
Right. So, I mean, you have kept the celebrations going, I mean, everything that we would normally do in person, like you mentioned, you got it all done. So, I mean, it was very impressive and, you're just always so there, and I appreciate that from my standpoint. You always put up with my text messages late at night.
Yes.
So thank you for that. So I appreciate that.
Well, I think a part of it was I think I forgot to send you the script for Michigan Week until the day before you were actually supposed to be recording your part. So
right.
That was my problem as well.
Well, and that was okay. We got through it, right?
Yes, it went very well.
Okay, so Larry has taken a look back at this week at how Greater West Bloomfield did not let the COVID-19 pandemic halt its many traditions that celebrate the good in our community.
Always a mainstay of life in the greater West Bloomfield area are the community events that bring its citizens together. And of course, over the past 15 or so months, these events have had to pivot in order to survive. To bring us insight into this topic, I spoke with perhaps the queen of West Bloomfield's community events, Deb Macon, who just wrapped up chairing the 49th Annual Michigan Week Awards.
Well, the first thing we did is determine that nothing was going to stand in our way of delivering the best we could to recognize volunteers in Greater West Bloomfield. So it then became, what are our options? How can we still do this? And of course, our partnerships came to mind. We've always connected with our partners at Civic Center TV. And when we put our heads together, magic happened.
In addition to her role with the Michigan Week Awards, Deb is also a very active member of the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Commission and works as a consultant and trainer. And she has realized through these duties that at least partial virtual workflow is not going to go away.
On occasion, we'll have a member who, for some reason, cannot be in town. And we do have a colleague who's going to be out of town on an extended absence. And he's going to be able to participate because it's our practice to identify, here is where we're signing in from. So the opportunity to connect in focused ways is helpful. Something that the Cable Commission did, we created a work group where we commit to a real intense 1 hour. And frequent connections for a specific amount of time have really served us well. So I'm thinking that that's something that we'll want to carry forward.
Deb stresses that one thing that has become vitally essential in this virtual learning world we've been using recently is active engagement on everyone's part.
What has changed is the definition of engagement. This is no longer a world of sit and get. People must be actively engaged, and there are ways to do that. And the rule of thumb is to have a way to actively engage the audience every 5 to 10 minutes in some way that's going to make us think a little differently, ask a probing question. So those are all real techniques that, once learned and practiced, give you an opportunity to bring more people into the conversation and the learning.
And Deb has learned one last vital lesson doing things virtually that needs to stay with us all moving forward.
Take the risk of learning more. Take the risk of asking more questions of more people. Our brain is constantly changing, and we have resources right here within our community that can help us make those transitions so that we stay fully functioning and fully engaged. It's a grand community. Let's contribute to it and take full advantage of it as well.
Reporting for The Splash, I'm Lawrence Nyland.
For more, you can visit civiccentertv.com/traditions. Later in the show, we get local businesses and your thoughts on the relaxation of COVID-19 rules and restrictions. And this special edition of The Splash returns after this quick break.
Don't go away. You're watching The Splash on Civic Center TV.
I'll be seeing you in all of our favorite places with laughter and warm embraces all day through. The park where we play, the stoop across the way, that favorite cookie smell, and Big Bird's tree we love so well. I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you.
I love you too.
With free COVID-19 vaccines, sunnier days are ahead. Visit getvaccineanswers.org.
I'll be seeing you.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know. The boys boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
And now, back to The Splash on Civic Center TV.
Welcome back to this special edition of The Splash on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. I'm Brooke Allen. So when COVID-19 went worldwide, our schools went from brick and mortar buildings to cyberspace, changing the way that students of all ages got their education. And I'm joined now by Civic Center TV reporter and University of Miami student Erica Jones. And Erica, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Brooke. It's good to be here.
It is so nice to be back face to face, right? We're not on Zoom, so that's a good thing. So let's first start about your experience as being a student during this pandemic. How has that been?
Honestly, I'm so thankful for the opportunity that I've been able to be in person. A lot of universities haven't been able to do that. I go to a more medium-sized school. There's about 12,000 undergrads, so I've gotten the opportunity to have most, if not all of my classes in person, socially distanced with masks on. And I want to sit here and tell you that it's been really rough, but then I do realize how lucky I am. So I have gotten hands-on experience. I've been able to be in the studio, work with camera equipment, go out, shoot live stories. A lot of Zoom interviews still going on, but it's been good. Could be worse. A lot of counting my blessings these days.
So, you know, it's interesting because, I mean, here we are in this business and so much has changed. So what is the biggest thing that you've learned through this?
I think there's two big things. One is be thankful for what you have. Like I said, I could sit here and think about how hard things have been and how I wish things were different, but you know someone always has it worse. And I'm so fortunate to be in the situation that I'm in, and I really think this has made me so much more thankful, and I realize that I'm in a position where I really can't ever complain about anything. And the other thing is just take advantage of your time. I'm again, so lucky to have the opportunity to be working here and have all this hands-on experience where I know so many people my age don't have local TV stations near them and they don't have the opportunity to get this hands-on experience, and they're working remotely, which is great. But for someone like me, I'm a very hands-on person. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to work in person, actually be able to come into the studio every day. So those two things, definitely just take advantage of your resources. And this time off too. I was home from school for 5-6 months, and I really took that time to try and start developing a platform for myself, which is something I'm still doing, and really a lot of personal growth and development where you could have easily spent those 6 months doing nothing. So I just think this time has been a lot of what you've chosen to make it, and everyone has handled it differently. But for me, definitely just take advantage of your time, take advantage of your resources. And again, these are candid answers. Didn't prepare all this, but off the top of my head, those are the biggest things I would say that I've taken out of
So
this.
An interesting perspective as far as, you know, you said you were home for 5 to 6 months. I mean, obviously you're used to living away, right? So how was it for you to be back with your family and back in the area for so long?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think about this all the time. I think that once you move away and you're living on your own, coming back is the hardest thing. And you expect summers you'll be home, but it's the basic things like no one when I'm up in Miami is there to tell me when dinner time is, or to clean the table, do my dishes, when I need
chores,
do my chores, when I need to be quiet at night. And obviously it's not like I have a set bedtime anymore, but it's still after a certain time of night, I have to be quiet, even if I'm on FaceTime with someone. Parents are trying to sleep down the hall. So it's definitely a huge adjustment going from being able to do what I want when I want to having a schedule of family dinners, certain activities. I can't just make whatever plans I want, because then my mom says to me, oh, Erica, I made these plans for us. And it's just very different. So I think that it's so hard for anyone once you do live away from home to then be back at home. As much as I love being with my family, and I know I'm closer with my family and my parents than most people I know, so I can't imagine what it's like for people that don't have that same bond with their family. It's probably even harder to then have to be reemerged in that environment.
So speaking of coming back, you are back. You're back for the summer now, and you're going to be with us on The Splash. You are going to be the producer, right?
Yes.
So that's exciting. Tell us what your plans are.
Right. So I actually recently found out that I was getting the opportunity to host The Splash this summer. And for me, that's really cool because my passion is being on air. I always want to be in front of the camera. And in school and just in a lot of places, you sometimes have to pick one or the other. It's always good to know how to produce, but at the same time, it is sometimes hard to be producing and being on camera. So when I have the choice of one or the other, I'm always going to choose to be on camera. But I have always wanted to have the opportunity to produce. So being here and now getting to produce this show is an experience that I probably would not have gotten anywhere else. I know up at school when I'm in Miami, I don't do any producing with our shows there just because you can't always do both, like I said. So I'm really excited about doing that. Starting in the next episode is when I'll really be producing. So I really want to, I don't know, you caught me off guard with what do I have planned, because not too much yet, but just a lot of organizational, administrative things I've started with, and just really kind of making sure that our pieces are very strong, maybe even taking a little bit of a different approach than we had before the pandemic, because it's a new time, it's a new world post-pandemic, so there's going to be a lot of what we have seen before, the things we knew and loved from the Splash, but definitely pivoting a little bit as the rest of the world has seen, and we'll see that even this week with the stories we've done. It's going to be a little bit different looking than the stories we've seen in the past.
Well, and it's so interesting because you have to go with what's happening in the world. That's what we're all about, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, it seems like we are at the light. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So it's very exciting. Even for us to be in the same studio together, right, is huge. So it's great to have you back. So we're so glad you're here. So thank you so much. And this week, Erica actually went out to the community to speak to local businesses, visitors, and residents to get their thoughts on the relaxation of COVID-19 regulations.
Finally, an end to the COVID-19 pandemic is in sight. It's no secret that local businesses were hit hard in the heat of it all, but they're not so quick to go back to what we knew as normal. Clothing store Guys and Gals at the Orchard Mall implemented many new ways to serve customers, which will actually continue in a post-pandemic world.
Not just at Guys and Gals, I don't think anywhere we're ever going back to what we were like before a pandemic. We DM customers all the time, FaceTime customers all the time, we did curbside, we did deliveries. The website actually started post-COVID. We have customers all over the country now. As long as we can accommodate our customers, we're happy to keep doing it. And we still bring stuff out to our customers. We still FaceTime our customers who aren't as comfortable, meet people here on a Sunday.
As restrictions are being lifted nationwide, you may be excited to spend a maskless Saturday at the mall, but you better keep one in your back pocket or some stores still won't let you in.
For the safety of our employees and our customers, which has been our decision-making process the whole time, we are still doing masks only, and nobody's really fought us on it. In fact, when we posted that and sent our email, people thanked us. It's going to take people a long time to be comfortable doing things. Everyone has a different comfort level, and I think that's what people have learned a lot about people through this whole thing.
So we know Guys and Gals is still erring on the side of caution, but not all places are. If I walk into Starbucks over here, no one's going to tell me I need to keep this thing on. But where do you stand? Are you comfortable going in public without a mask on?
Yes, because I am fully vaccinated.
My comfort level is very, very high. I've been vaccinated since December.
So I continue to wear a mask when I go into establishments, restaurants, stores, and things of that nature, and only really take it off when I'm interacting, conversing with someone individually.
Outside, like walking where I'm going now on the trail, I won't wear a mask. But inside, I always wear a mask.
I always carry my mask with me, just in case. Pretty much I feel comfortable now.
I just think that any precautions we can take for health and safety of others or ourselves are things that I'm willing to do.
Mostly I work outside, so that is the best, safest place to interact with people. However, because other people are uncomfortable, I will mask up for their comfort.
I go in places that don't have masks, like Costco doesn't. People don't have to wear masks, and they take their word for it that they've been vaccinated.
It's really hard to regulate, and you have to just hope that people are on the honor system.
Just remember that even if you feel comfortable without a mask on, the person next to you might not. And businesses aren't necessarily going to tell us what to do anymore. It's now up to you and me to keep each other safe. Reporting for The Splash, I'm Erica Jones.
To know more, you can visit civiccentertv.com/masks. Well, joining me now in the studio is the newest member of our team, Daniel Zivian. Daniel just completed his sophomore year at Michigan State University as a journalism student and is now joining our team as an intern for the summer of 2021. And Daniel, nice to see you again. We had just realized shortly that our paths have actually crossed before.
Yes, it's pretty amazing. I shadowed you at WWJ. I was standing right behind you while you in the studio were doing the midday news.
Right.
That was a pretty amazing experience. And then suddenly,
here we are.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see you again. So we spoke to Erica about her experience as a student during the pandemic. Your experience has been a little bit different because you have not been at school since this started.
No, I have not. I have lived since March 2020 at the house I grew up in with my parents and my little brother. Every night is family dinner night. It is a special kind of world to live in. And we all, and we've really run the gamut. We got sick of each other. We like each other again. We get sick of each other again. And as for school, that means it's all been virtual for me on online platforms, Zoom lectures, and the works. And in the fall, I thought, this will be easy. I've had the whole summer off and the spring off, basically. I can do this. And it turns out that virtual school is a lot harder than it looks. And it really, although I've ended up with good grades both fall and spring semesters, thankfully.
That's good.
I'm very thank you. I'm very happy about it. But it was a real ride to get there. And as for creating content, I haven't been making real news at all. This is the first time I'm making real news in a while. During the pandemic, I'm a part of MSU Telecasters, so we produced fake parody news, which, what's the difference? But,
right.
We produced fake parody news virtually, and we would all shoot our own parts and get them edited together. And the real name of the game was flexibility, and just looking out for each other over the air. It's been a crazy social experience in that regard, and I'm just glad that I get to go back in August to my own apartment, to room with people and dine with people and start creating content with people again.
And right. I mean, because the whole Zoom thing, it's just been so interesting, and it takes the personality out of it to some degree, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, the interaction. I mean, we're in the studio together, so it's awesome to actually be able to interview people face to face again.
Oh yeah, interviews and of course everything that's on Zoom. Lectures in school are especially difficult. Writers' meetings for telecasters. You have to go one at a time because if you talk over each other, stuff's gonna break. Some people don't have good internet, some do. Taking all of that middleman out of the equation next fall will be such a game changer.
Okay, so tell me, I asked Erica this, so I'm gonna ask you too. What is the biggest thing you've learned?
There are so many lessons to take out of the pandemic. Erica discussed, perspective, and I very much agree with that. The other big lesson, especially related to the business, is, as I said earlier, flexibility. There were so many things, schedules that had to change while we were creating Telecasters content. Getting things done on time is a lot harder when we're not together doing our shoots in Studio E in the Com Arts building. So flexibility was probably the biggest broadcasting lesson I took out of it. But in general, it's real. It gives you a real sense of perspective when you watch the news and see what's going on all across the country all of these months. So yeah, I'm thankful for that I've been able to stay healthy. I have a chronic disease even, so it's been especially difficult to, you go out there and you're like on your toes.
Right.
So thankfully I've come out of this with no COVID, as healthy as can be, and I have a lot of people to thank for that, and a lot of things to be thankful for. So yeah, it's flexibility, perspective.
Okay, so you are going to be the intern this summer before you are able to go back to school. So tell me, what is the one thing you're looking forward to here at the Splash and to be a part of this?
One thing I'm really looking forward to is And I didn't think I'd be doing this so early, but getting to make my own news packages, I think at a lot of places that's the sort of thing you might get to ease into. If you go to like one of the bigger places, you don't know what you'll get to do. You might be fetching coffee or something. Here, this is local access television, and I've been thrown right into the thick of it.
Okay, well, you know what? We are super excited you're here. It's so nice to see you again in a different setting, right? And Daniel, as you mentioned, he actually went into the community this week to speak to a community partner about her work to help get the community active and social again as the pandemic comes to a close.
85 degrees. That's been the consistent weather over the past week. Summer has arrived in Michigan, and after a cruel winter and mild spring, what better place to feel the heat than your local public park? Kelly Heyer, Recreation Superintendent at West Bloomfield Parks, is all too aware of the critical role her department has played, especially during the pandemic.
Back in June, a year ago, when the restrictions were lifted, the stay-at-home orders was lifted, we saw our park attendance just skyrocket to numbers we've never seen before pre-pandemic. So we knew right away that, okay, people are going to seek us out, and how are we going to handle this? So that's
as important as the parks were last year, this coming June, they'll be getting even more of a boost. On Thursday, Governor Whitmer announced the lifting of all outdoor capacity limits starting June 1st. That means West Bloomfield favorites like Marshbank Park, once sparsely attended, will now be brimming with life.
For us, this is great news because we can lift some of the capacity limitations. So for example, our outdoor concert series, last year, we were capped at 100. We still did it at 100 people last year. And this summer, up until today, we were anticipating a cap of 300. So we're really excited to be able to lift and serve more patrons, get back to a little bit of a normal cadence.
The governor also announced the increasing of indoor capacity to 50%, which opens up even more possibilities. The West Bloomfield Sports Club is already welcoming back its members, some of whom will be returning for the first time since March 2020. With the fast-approaching lifting day of June 1st, West Bloomfield Parks are still working out the details.
Right now, Senior Center Connect is closed and will remain closed until we do have the final touches on our plans for that. But as far as outdoor stuff, we have a lot planned. And so, like you said, give us a few more days to take a look at capacities and we'll be lifting those.
Although the plans are not yet finished, Heyer is already excited about a further return to normalcy.
I'm a people person. I love people. I love gatherings. I love organizing large-scale events and seeing the masses create memories for their families, and enjoy every space that we have here. We're very fortunate in West Bloomfield to have amazing park spaces and trails. So for me not to be able to come in the office and see everybody on a daily basis, it's been really hard.
This June 1st, expect to hear music, joy, and laughter all over town. For The Splash, I'm Daniel Zivian.
For more, you can visit civiccentertv.com/post-pandemic-social. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll take a look back and celebrate the people who have gone above and beyond to keep us safe during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Don't go away. You're watching The Splash on Civic Center TV.
Can I ask you a question? Why'd you get vaccinated?
I'd like to go to these school dances and spring break to have fun.
I want to be in person for college next semester.
I want to get out of this pandemic.
I wanted to protect the people around me.
Why did you get vaccinated?
Because I'm really looking forward to hanging out with my friends.
I just want to go to a show, dance around, not have to worry about anything, feel like I'm free again.
So we can not miss out on the best years of our life.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different.
One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games?
Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
I choose.
I choose.
I choose.
I choose.
I choose to stay above the influence for my education.
For my sports and my family.
For football.
To protect my future.
To pursue my dream of becoming a lawyer.
Because cheer is important to me.
I stay above the influence because I can focus better in school and make a positive impact on the world.
For my family and as well my passion in photography.
So I can keep my focuses on my dream.
To be a great leader and focus on my archery. Because I want to have a strong mind and a strong body.
To protect my future.
To stay healthy and to stay safe.
I stay above the influence to continue to pursue what I love.
Because I'm an athlete and I don't want to damage my body.
To spread positivity through my peers and to be a positive leader in my community.
To focus on my extracurricular activities.
Because as an advocate for You Matter at my high school, I believe in relying on a support system of friends and loved ones rather than turning to substance abuse.
Because I want to be the best I can be for those I love.
For my family and for my health.
I'm above the influence because of books and this ball.
And now, back to The Splash on Civic Center TV.
Welcome back to this special edition of The Splash on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. I'm Brooke Allen. Over the past 14 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have all witnessed firsthand those who have kept working, sacrificed, and even in some cases, given their lives in order to keep our community and our neighbors safe and healthy. And we believe that there are no better people to honor in our first Person of the Week segment in over a year than those on the front lines. As we struggle to adjust to a new normal where we kept at a distance, the individuals working to keep our grocery stores stocked, keep our community safe, and support the public health work tirelessly to ease our worries and keep our society functioning. And we thank our firefighters, our police officers, teachers, and nurses, as well as the grocery store and restaurant workers, and so many more, all who have sacrificed and put their own health and safety at risk to keep us going during this historic crisis. And while we can never repay them for their sacrifice, our community will be forever grateful for their service, perseverance, and courage, which is why our frontline workers are our People of the Week. That's it for this special episode of The Splash. You can join us weekly for new episodes on Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99, as well as online and HD on CivicCenterTV.com. And of course, follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Civic Center TV to stay up to date with the latest from here at Civic Center TV. And you can also listen to me weekdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on WWJ News Radio 950 and online on the Odyssey app. For all of our friends in Sylvan Lake, Orchard Lake, Hego Harbor, and West Bloomfield, I'm Brooke Allen. Thank you for watching The Splash.